Today I'm reviewing 3 books about Peter Thiel. I enjoyed all 3 books, and I like learning about Peter Thiel. He's a businessman. He wrote the book 0 to 1. He was one of the early investors in Facebook. I'll tell you a lot more about him in this episode, but definitely somebody to watch and learn about if you're interested in business at all. He also has an interesting contrarian personality type, which I really enjoy learning about, and that's kind of the subject of the first of the 3 books. So book number 1 is The Contrarian, Peter Thiel and Silicon Valley's Pursuit of Power by Max Chafkin, I believe. Chafkin. So this book is good and worthwhile. It's the best overview of Peter Thiel's entire life. And I'll give you just the broad strokes in case you don't know a lot about Peter Thiel. He was, he grew up outside the U.S. mostly. In Europe, his family traveled around. I believe they lived in South Africa a little bit, and which was interesting. Elon Musk, one of his business partners at PayPal, is from South Africa. And so his family was an immigrant family to the United States. He then got into Stanford. He was a great student, did well there. He was very academic, very into chess and things like this. And while at Stanford, he wrote for the conservative newspaper, the student paper. He also published a book. I can't think of the name of it offhand. I do own it, but it's actually not super interesting. It's focused on kind of conservative political ideas of the 1990s and might not even reflect his current views, but it shows where he was at as a student. He was very influenced by one of his professors, Rene Girard, and his mimetic theory. There are lots of YouTube videos about that if you want to get up to speed on it. And he was also a fan of Ayn Rand. So Peter Thiel was kind of in the conservative libertarian sort of space as a college student, and that really hasn't changed a lot since then, it seems, although obviously he's learned a lot and evolved as a person in various ways. The book talks about his professional life a lot. He, out of Stanford Law School, he went to, I believe, New York City and worked at a law firm briefly for a few months and just decided he did not want to spend his life doing that. Totally understandable. And then he moved back out west. He wanted to be in California, and he started a hedge fund there. And so he essentially wanted to be a businessman, to make money through investments. Max Lepchin was, I believe, a student at the time and came and heard him give a guest lecture at Stanford. And so he proposed that they work together on this new business opportunity, PayPal. And Peter wanted to invest in it, but I think initially didn't really plan to spend a lot of time with the company. Anyway, he ended up going with PayPal. They merged with a company called X.com, which had been founded by Elon Musk and his associates. And they created what we know as PayPal. At one point, Elon Musk was ousted, and Peter Thiel became the CEO. But eventually, he exited, and he and the various PayPal founders did pretty well financially as a result. He then used his wealth to continue investing in other companies. He was the first major investor in Facebook, and that panned out really well for him. He went on and started a company called Palantir, which is now publicly traded, and has done a lot of other interesting business things. He also, in the 2016 election cycle, was the lone business person in Silicon Valley endorsing Donald Trump. And so at that point in the book, once the Contrarian book gets to this point in Peter Thiel's life, it takes a little bit of a political turn. Obviously, this is a point when Peter Thiel became outspoken about politics, but also the author, this Max Chafkin, seems to be kind of standard, somewhat lefty, mainstream media journalist. That's I know him only from this book, but that's my impression. And so he suggests in various ways, I think he tries to keep an objective tone throughout the book and does a pretty good job of that. I think he's fair, but in various ways he suggests that Peter Thiel's political ideas were substantively wrong. And so he has a little bit of criticism for his support of Donald Trump. Then later he gets into the whole COVID-19 time period. And the author criticizes Peter Thiel for spreading misinformation, such as the idea that being vaccinated wouldn't stop you from getting COVID-19 and other things. And so the author accuses Peter Thiel of accepting or spreading misinformation about ideas that have since been validated, have since been proven to have actually been accurate. And that's okay. I mean, that's just kind of maybe some political tribalism, a little bit disappointing in a biography, but whatever. But where the author, I think, is most disappointing is when he tries to do some mind reading on Peter Thiel. At various points in the book, he'll say that Thiel did something like, at one point, Peter Thiel was interested in the ocean steading movement, which is this idea that you'll build floating communities in the ocean that will be essentially libertarian paradises because there will be no government telling you what to do out there. So Peter Thiel supported that for a little bit, and the author suggests that he was doing that just to bolster his image as a contrarian. And at another point, what did he do? He did some less popular investment strategy, and again, or how about when he endorsed Trump, the author again suggests that he was doing this to burnish his image as a contrarian. And I think that's such nonsense. I don't think Peter Thiel needs an image as a contrarian. I think he's just not that conscious of his appearance. And there's, of course, evidence both ways. But to me, this is the author's failure to understand Peter Thiel's personality, or even to grasp that there might be some people out there who actually don't care very much about their public persona. And Peter Thiel has always struck me as one of those people. Anyway, so I have some gripes. The author becomes too much of the story towards the end. But if you want a complete overview of Peter Thiel's life, The Contrarian is, I think, the only show in town, the only book out there that really does that. So of the three, it's my least favorite, but it's necessary if you want to understand Peter Thiel's whole life and have not followed him really closely. Okay, the next one would be my second favorite of the group, and that's called The Founders, the story of PayPal and the entrepreneurs who shaped Silicon Valley. One of the founders that are being discussed in the book is Peter Thiel, and he definitely is someone who has helped shape Silicon Valley. This book focuses on the combination of X.com and PayPal, and is trying to explain how Reid Hoffman, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Max Levchin, all these people came out of one group of entrepreneurs and then went on to start many multi-billion-dollar companies afterwards. So the book gives kind of a blow-by-blow of the founding of PayPal, how it progressed as a business, how Elon Musk got ousted, how Peter Thiel became CEO, and so on. To me, it was more detail about PayPal, the company, than I actually wanted, although I get that a lot of people would be interested in that. The reason I read the book was because of the central question, which is, how did so many founders of PayPal go on to be so successful with subsequent companies? My own theory of this had been that, look, in the late 90s, there were thousands of internet startups. Of course, one of them was going to be amazing. Should have been more than one. Amazon did pretty well too. There are some other companies that come out of it. And if you have that many people trying to do something, there's going to be some group somewhere which just by chance is awesome. That, unfortunately, is not a very satisfying theory because it makes the situation not really replicable. If you're going out to found a company, you might want to be the next PayPal, but if your theory is that PayPal happened by chance, then that just doesn't provide a lot of guidance. Another theory I've had, and that the book supports a bit, is that the PayPal founders were very careful in their hiring. They were very intentional about who they brought on board. They had strict, zany requirements. They asked hard questions, and they ended up hiring a lot of people like themselves. A lot of entrepreneurs will tell you to go into business with someone very different from yourself so your skill sets are diversified. But at PayPal, that doesn't seem to have been the philosophy. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, for example, have quite similar personalities. They're different spins on a similar set of founding principles. I believe the book notes that many of the founders had uncanny similarities. They had all built amateur explosives when they were young. They had all read the Lord of the Rings books. There were various other things that they'd all done that were kind of quirky. So those are two popular theories, but the book towards the end gives a theory that I like even better, which is that the people who exited from PayPal, so these founders of PayPal who then were cashed out when the company was acquired and who went on to start other companies, they had an advantage in their future startups because they had easy access to capital. They could go raise money from other PayPal founders, and they did. So if you're Elon Musk starting SpaceX, you go to Peter Thiel for funding, which is exactly what happened. And Thiel was one of the major funders in SpaceX that allowed it to do its fourth rocket launch that was successful for the first time. Similarly, if you're Peter Thiel founding Palantir, you're going to go around to your former PayPal buddies and they'll help fund your new business. So access to capital seems to be the best explanation, but it's not a complete explanation. These were still very qualified, very brilliant people in some cases. But great book. Read The Founders to try to figure that out. Peter Thiel is one of many characters mentioned in there. A lot of it focuses on Elon Musk, as you might expect, but it really shows how Peter Thiel interacts with other people as a business person. So pretty interesting. Okay, so now to my third and favorite of the bunch. This is more of a topic-focused book, and it's written so well and is just really entertaining. I've read it a couple times. The book is called Conspiracy, A True Story of Power, Sex, and a Billionaire's Secret Plot to Destroy a Media Empire by Ryan Holiday. You might know Ryan Holiday from some of his other books like The Ego is the Enemy. He writes these kind of stoic books. He used to do research for, is it Robert Greene, who wrote the Laws of Power, the Laws of Mastery, and all those books. So he likes to go through a lot of historical examples and write these books that draw out principles with modern application. In this book, though, that's not what he's doing. I think this is Ryan Holiday's best book. In Conspiracy, he tells the story of how Peter Thiel became offended by Gawker, a media publication, and then funded a lawsuit by Hulk Hogan against Gawker, which ultimately put the Gawker news site out of business. The issue was interesting because it raises freedom of the press issues. People who don't like Peter Thiel or don't like what he did will say that this was bad for the press, bad for media to have one wealthy person destroying a media empire. But people who support Thiel, and I actually definitely lean towards his direction on this one, are saying no, the defamation laws exist for a reason, and normal people, when they get defamed, even celebrities like Hulk Hogan, can't afford to fight these major media companies to be recompensed for defamation. But in this case, a good-willed billionaire, Peter Thiel, was able to step in and help someone achieve justice. I think from a legal perspective, and I am a lawyer, I think that's kind of a pretty good take on it. But read the book and decide. Whatever you decide, it's going to be a fascinating read. And Ryan Holiday makes it very good and even-handed. It's so basically the setup is Peter Thiel, sometime in the early 2000s, was the subject of some articles in Ballywag, which was a Gawker publication, or a publication acquired by Gawker. And basically, they were announcing to Silicon Valley and the business world that Peter Thiel was a homosexual, which his friends already knew, but was not a way he wanted to label himself in public. So he didn't like that. And from then on, he formed the opinion that Gawker was bad for media, that all it was doing was trading on people's private personal information that wasn't really newsworthy, but was very damaging to the people that it pertained to. And so he watched, there were some other things that Gawker did that, and Nick Denton, I believe, is the name of the founder of Gawker. There were some other things that Peter Thiel didn't like. And at one point, a young guy, I don't think we know the identity of the person, met with Peter Thiel and proposed to him that he should fund a lawsuit against Gawker to destroy it. And Peter Thiel was definitely looking for cases that would work against Gawker. And then there was this horrible Hulk Hogan case. You know, Hulk Hogan, the professional wrestler, I can't remember if his wife died or divorced him, but somehow he was suddenly single, and he ended up having sexual relations with a woman, and he was being filmed by, I think, the woman's husband, but it was a friend of his. And so it created this horrible sex tape, which the friend then sold to media. And so it was a complete betrayal of him by a close friend. Yes, he was doing something, embarrassing, but it wasn't illegal. But then suddenly he was being exposed for ridicule. And when Gawker published the video, it, of course, went all over the internet. It was hugely embarrassing to Hulk Hogan. As he points out, Hulk Hogan is like his TV personality. I forget his real name. I think it's Belia or something like that, his last name. But anyway, he personally was very negatively affected by the release of his private information. And so Hulk Hogan wanted to sue Gawker, couldn't afford it, but Peter Thiel stepped in and financially backed him confidentially. And the lawsuit went well. I forget the amount of the verdict, but it put Gawker right out of business. And then it eventually came to light that Peter Thiel had funded it, and that's where there was all the controversy. If I'm remembering correctly, I think there's a Netflix series about it as well, or some documentary series that was on Netflix. I think I watched that back in the day. But the best source of information on it, I think, is this book. And this book, Conspiracy, so that's my favorite of the three. It's also cited in the book The Contrarian, and really is the best source of information on this particular issue. All right, well, those are some highlights of Peter Thiel. I still feel like, it's just like the recent Walter Isaacson biography of Elon Musk, with super interesting, active modern figures like this. I wish there were multi-volume biographies. I'd be willing to read a whole lot more biography about Peter Thiel. But for now, The Contrarian, The Founders, and Conspiracy give you a really great overview. I recommend them all. Despite my caveats or whatever, enjoyed each of them.